If you have the ability to take a character that I don't like and the actions that I don't agree with and the lifestyles and the perspectives that I, as the reader, am finding conflicting, and you immerse me into this story in a way that causes me to think more about their journey and just so many different things, I appreciate it. Hey, and welcome to my channel. This is Mrs. R's Books and Things. If you connect with me and on other spaces, you'll know me as Mrs. R Bookish. And if you visit my website, you'll know that it's Mrs. R's Reading Corner. So thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Akwaeke Emezi. You made a fool of death with your beauty. Okay, so I currently have the ebook version of this on my Kindle Paperwhite. And we can get into this device a little bit later, but I currently have it as the ebook version, and I actually want to get it as the actual hard cover copy of it, or paperback, I don't care, but I just want a physical copy of it. So I'm going to read, just help you to see a little bit about what this is already about. If you're not someone that has already heard anything about it, I'm going to just kind of catch you up to speed. And one reason for me doing this is so that I don't give you any spoilers if you have not already read it. But I think what I'm going to do is, at some point in the middle of this, I'm going to have to tell those of you who have not read it to go ahead and exit, so that I can give my full thoughts on this for those of you who have read it and just want to kind of engage in the conversation. So let me just kind of read through it a little bit. So Faye Adekola, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say her name. She wants to learn how to be alive. It's been 5 years since the accident that killed the love of her life, and she's almost a new person. An artist with her own studio and sharing a brownstone apartment with her ride or die best friend Joy, who insists it's time for Faye to ease back into the dating scene. Faye isn't ready for anything serious, but a steamy encounter at a rooftop party cascades into a whirlwind summer she could have never imagined. A luxury trip to a tropical island, decadent meals in a glorious home of a celebrity chef, and a major curator who wants to launch her art career. She even started dating the perfect guy, but their new relationship might be sabotaged before it has a chance by the overwhelming desire Faye feels every time she locks eyes with the one person in the house who is most definitely off limits, his father. This new life she asked for got a lot more complicated, and Faye must begin her search for real answers. Who is she ready to become? Can she release her past and honor her grief while still embracing her future? And of course, there's the biggest question of all: how far is she willing to go for a second chance at love? Akwaeke Emezi's vivid and passionate writing takes us deep into a world of possibility and healing, and the constant bravery of choosing love against all odds. Okay, so I read that right. Now, I just want to kind of go through my initial thoughts on the book. Number one, I'm going to tell you, I am so glad I did not read that summary, because I would not have read the book. And that is just the truth. The reason why is because I feel like summaries today are like previews. They give away too much information. When someone has a whole minute to 3 minutes to do a preview on a movie, they just start filling it. And what they fill it with is all the good information, all the action packed parts. And then when you actually sit down and watch the movie, you're like, I already saw that. That was in the preview. They gave me all the good stuff in the preview. And now I know basically the whole thing of the movie. So I have this running joke with my husband. Whenever I'm sitting down to watch a preview, when it goes past a certain point, I just kind of look at him and say, "Hey, babe, that was a good movie, wasn't it?" And so I don't like previews past a certain amount of time. I will say I like a short preview, but not long, extensive previews. And long for me is like once it hits a minute. And that's about it. Okay, maybe a minute and a half. But anyway, that's the same way I feel about the synopsis or the summaries on books. I feel like sometimes the description of the book gives away too much information. If you watch my previous video on Escaping Altezza by D'Artagnan Johnson, I also read the summary of that book. It does not tell you what's happening in the book. It just gives you enough to pull you in and to have you wanting to go on that journey. I already can tell you that the summary of this particular book, Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, was a little bit too much. They should not have included that it was the father. They should have just kind of left it, because I think it automatically, when you read it, you kind of already are like, what the heck is going on here? And this is one of those stories that you really have to go in not clearly knowing everything. You really don't need to know every aspect of this book. It is, number one, it's not that thick. You know, it's not like this. It's not like this. You know, it's not even, I don't even think it's a 400-page book, but let me see. Oh no, it's 284 pages. So we just have enough to build character, you know, get the plot going at the right pace, hit the climax, and then come on out. It's not enough for you to like have all these details and know what's going on and not feel bored or feel like you already know what's happening. You know, that was my first time reading it, actually, the summary. I've never read the summary. What I did do, though, which is what I always do, and people may feel like this is not how you select books, but I normally kind of look at a book's cover, which you should not judge a book by a cover, right? But I do. I look at the book's cover. I go pull up some information on it. I listen to what people are saying about it. And I may even start to read the beginning of the summary, the beginning of the synopsis, and then I'm done, right? So that's kind of what I did with this one. I don't even think I read the summary. I just was like, I really want to read that book. I was just kind of like, a lot of people are excited about it. Why not, right? Sometimes it's nice to go in blind. It's just a book. It's we're not taking a trip blindly. We're not, you know, doing anything chaotic. So I went ahead and I went in on the book. I want to be honest, I am so glad that I did. I want to tell you, number one, this book had me very conflicted, okay? It had me at a place where I did not always like the characters, and I did not always like what the characters did. However, the book forced me to try to understand the characters. It forced me to try to understand their reasoning, their basis for their actions. It forced me to, as these characters were being developed throughout the story, to really challenge some of my own beliefs and ideas about life and other people's lives, and to really sit down and to contemplate for a little while. Like, what we always know to be right, sometimes is not. Now, I'm not saying that about everything. I'm definitely not saying that about everything. But what I am saying is that we are not the only person. Like, I, as Makita, am not the only person trying to make sense out of my life and out of my experience. Everyone around me is trying to make sense out of their lives and out of their experience. And this is one thing that I found very prevalent in this book. Was even for those people who thought that they had it all together, they were still on a path of trying to figure things out for themselves, trying to have a happy place. They had already been in a spot where they felt like, you know, this is what life is going to be like. This is what I've accepted. This is what I've done. This is where I am. And that's it. However, as they encountered new people, new circumstances, things happened that were out of their control, and even things that happened within their control, they still found that within themselves, they were challenged to really dig deep and ask themselves what they wanted and who they were. And many of them did things that they never thought that they would do. And others just stepped out on a limb, and some held back, right? In conversations with like my book club and different people on the story, on this book, I've tried to make it very clear that one of my reasonings for liking this book so much was because of the challenges that were in it. It was because I did not always like the characters. It was because I did not always agree with the story. It was because of the wild roller coaster ride and the shocking elements in it for me that ultimately, in the end, I was able to look at this character and be very non-judgmental and shocked with myself about the process that I took as I read it and as I got to know them, right? So I'll say that. I'll also say that the writing in this book I found to be I don't want to say exquisite, but I thought the writing was great. I felt like, number one, I've read published books before that were published in the industry. They're not indie author books, and they're full of error and they don't flow well, and they really needed a lot more editing. I didn't struggle with that in this book. I've also read books that I felt like were very repetitive in their verbiage, that they use the same words, the same tones, the same things over and over again to express what they were trying to say. And I did not feel this about Akwaeke Emezi. I felt like the amount of emotion, expression, verbiage, the usage of the words were proper in every way for the situation and the circumstance and where we were in the plot and which character we were dealing with. And this is what made the book good. This is why I want the hardcover. It's not because I love the story. It's not because I did enjoy the story. But what I'm saying is, as I read it, I looked at the author and I said, wow. Because if you have the ability to take a character that I don't like and the actions that I don't agree with and the lifestyles and the perspectives that I, as a reader, am finding conflicting, and you immerse me into this story in a way that causes me to think more about their journey and just so many different things, I appreciate it. By no means do I think that anyone's opinion has to be changed as they're reading this book. By no means do I think that someone should not judge someone just because they're reading this book. I think everyone is on a different journey when we read, right? It's the reason why there are some books I cannot read at one point, and then I go back and I read them and I do really well with them. One example of that for me was A Mercy by Toni Morrison. I tried reading this book 2016 or 17, something like that, and I could not get through it. I just couldn't. But I read it this year and I was able to get through it, and I actually enjoyed it. I love the writing of it. We are always in a different place and space in our minds and our hearts and our journeys and in our reading experience, that this may be something that you don't like today, but in the future you might, or you may never like it. I don't know. But I really enjoyed it. I thought the pace of the book was great because, from page one, it's on, right? There's all kind of stuff happening from page one, and it only goes up from there. There's a great build up to the climax, literally. And I don't think that there was any misplacement in the journey. I feel like the characters were probably developed along the way as well. And I think that even the insight that Akwaeke Emezi put into the book in understanding different journeys that people are on, I feel were very appropriate. I've seen many things happen that I recognized in the book, and things that we think about that we don't ever say to anybody, they were present in the book. And I think that everyone from every perspective can say that they could find themselves in one character, whether a major character or a minor character. You could find yourself in one space of this book, which I think is great. So on my website, I said the quality of the writing, the plot, the pace, the characters. I enjoyed it. Oh, the ease of reading and the creativity. All right, let's talk about first the ease of reading. Number one, like I said, the way that Akwaeke Emezi writes, I love it. Will I find this in the other books that have been written by this particular author? I do not know. But in this particular book, I loved it. And I would read it again. I would definitely go back and read it again. I actually want the physical copy, right? So I've already purchased the ebook on the Kindle. I want the physical copy. It was very easy to read for me. There were points where I wondered if I was going to be able to stop reading it because it was so good. And there was a point in this book where I forced myself to put it down so that I could digest what had just happened. Like, I literally was like, wait a minute. what just happened, right? And that was necessary for my progress, for my process. That may not be necessary for everyone, but it was necessary for me. And the major reason for that was because I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa. So, creativity and quality of the message. Okay, so for quality of the message, what I will say is I think that the point in the writing was to show that everyone has a journey. You may not always get what you're expecting, right? But this journey of life has a way of giving you things that if you see them with the right perspective, they could become extremely beautiful. But your beauty will not be the same as, it will not be viewed the same for everyone. And their beauty may not be viewed the same for you. I don't know if that's really the message, but I know that there's a lot of development in here, and there's a lot of internal struggle for everyone. And the journey that these characters are on really cause us to look at society and individuals and acceptance and love and the family dynamic in so many different ways that it really is a great conversational piece. Yes, it is a great conversational piece. So I think the quality of the message is really great. Is it creative? From my perspective, yes. Now, someone else may read this and say, I know someone who's done this before, or I know someone, I've seen this type of art before, or but what I loved about this book was the beautiful landscapes that were created in every arena, from the club to the apartment to even the airplane, to to the father's house, to the art gallery, the mountaintop. Every scene I felt like was creatively orchestrated in a way that I could see it very vividly in my mind. And I appreciate that. I really appreciated that in the writing. I loved it. I also loved that there was a richness in this story. A richness that I loved seeing in the fact that these were people of color, these were Black people. And I love seeing that there was a high quality of life and high expectations and wealth. And every time that it seemed like there would be lack, there was not. We need that a lot of times, especially when we're telling stories that are hard to digest, right? There are certain stories that we read oftentimes where that's just not the picture that we get, and that's okay. But I think for me, one of the things that made this story so beautiful was that the people were rough around the edges, but their spaces didn't have to be. Their quality of life was still beautiful in all areas, whether that was a person who was working every day and working hard and trying to figure things out, or someone who had the most money. These spaces were still beautiful, at least in my mind. And I love the houses as I saw them, with the glass and the vineyards and the mountaintops. And I really felt like creatively, this is a beautiful landscape for a story. Okay, the other thing that I loved about it, that I want to say about creativity, was the art. The art itself was hard. The art itself was full of pain. The art itself was like, the story made me cry in one instance because I've been married for 20 years, and it made me think about how I would feel about so many different things. And that art, it was devastatingly beautiful in my mind, right? Like, I'm saying this like y'all can see it. But I am very much aware that this is a book. I know I'm talking about like it's a movie or something, a play you can go see, but I saw it. I saw it in my mind. It's one of the reasons why I love this book so much. Again, I gave it 5 stars. I said that. I gave it 5 stars. I haven't put it on my blog yet. This is going to be the first video I do about it. But I gave it 5 stars. And a lot of these things are the reasons why. So now that I said all that, if you have not read this book, then I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to go ahead and get out of here. Go. Thank you for joining. Make sure to hit that like button, follow me on TikTok, subscribe, all that other good stuff. But I don't want to ruin the book for you, okay? So take this time to go ahead and exit stage left. Okay. Are they gone? All right, so now for those of you who have stuck around because you have read the book, right? Whether you agree with me about what I'm about to say or not, right? I hope you do agree about the beauty in the book. And I think that sometimes it's very hard for people to separate whether they like the story and is the writing good? What was the quality of the writing? What did the author do that was great, right? As I mentioned before, I didn't like a lot of the characters. I essentially did not like how Faye was. Just, there were things that I was like, what? What are you doing? There were elements about Nasir that I liked and other things, of course, about him, like when he went crazy and he attacked her, that I felt were just out of line. I did not, like, I'm just being clear, the whole element with his father and her, initially I didn't agree with it. I didn't. And then as I got through the book, and I thought about how we all have different expectations of ourselves in life and everything, and I felt really bad for Nasir. I felt like, he went in and he had his heart open, his eyes open, and I think that she didn't really give him a fair chance. But I also kind of thought, and I could be wrong for this, but I mean, this is just how the story is, right? I also kind of thought that at one point he saw what was happening, and whether he wanted to ignore it or not, he saw what was happening, and he could have taken different points to make sure that what he thought was happening was not happening. And I say that because there's no way that this whole thing is happening and two people in this space are feeling each other and no one sees it. Absolutely no one. Someone sees it and someone is questioning, and at the point where if he really loved her and he really wanted her, I'm not saying he needed to compete with his father, but I'm saying that it was his job to express his love and his care and to win her heart, because really that's what she was looking for. She was looking for this dynamic in someone that could win her over, that could help her to love herself, that could bring out in her what was lost, what was gone. Now, I think obviously there was this connection between his father and her with the death of their spouses, that Nasir could never connect with her on that level, right? But I also didn't think that that was the only thing that connected them. I think they were obviously very physically attracted to one another. And then there were the elements of the richness in the quality of life that I can't remember his name now, his father, that he was providing in the experiences, and not about money, but about the abundance of life. And it's just a different mindset that people have when they are not striving, when they already have established wealth and established, their confidence. And there were so many different things in his dad that had already gotten to a certain level that it was like, once that connection was there was only two choices. It was either going to be a level of reverence and respect or a level of intimacy and love. And I kind of felt like those were the two things, because there was no hating him, right? There was no not loving him. Everyone around him loved him. And this was just the character that we saw. So I did not agree with the choices that they made. However, as the story began to continue on, I also wondered if it was inevitable. I wondered if they were actually wrong. It's crazy to say, but it's the truth. I know a lot of people have said, like, how would you feel if somebody, but this is not me. This is a story. That's the first thing. This is not me. This is a story. Secondly, I think the thing that we must recognize is that while Nasir was her friend, right? Remember, this had already kind of played itself out in that Nasir did his friend the same way and said, I don't need his permission. So it was kind of like a foreshadowing of what was coming, because Nasir felt the same way when she was walking away from his friend. And even though that was a purely physical relationship, they still spent time together, right? And so now and he feels like, well, because he's connected with her in a heart manner, she made it clear that it was just on a friendship level, even though they shared that kiss, which I think, kind of messed up things a little bit. But she still was not there yet. She still wasn't in that place. So there's a level of, what do you expect to happen when you don't walk in integrity? You can't expect everybody to walk in integrity, especially when you're not doing it yourself. And so what I mean by that is just that Nasir didn't talk to his friend initially before he went after Faye, and I'm not sure that he thought that would ever come back to haunt him, but it came back to haunt him in like the worst way. For Faye, I felt like she was deeply damaged and hurt. And throughout this whole story, while I did not agree with everything that she did, I kind of understood, because this was a woman who was broken, who was lost, who was looking to cope in her world, trying to find an answer, trying to find a reason to keep on living, trying to find beauty in life. And for her, these were the only choices that made sense. Someone could ask me, like, do you condone this type of activity? I don't condone it, but I also don't judge either, because I'm not them. I'm not in that space. I'm not in a place where, this has happened to me. I mean, like, this story made me cry. It literally made me cry, because she lost her husband, right? And Nasir's dad lost his wife, right? And like I said, I've been married for over 20 years, and I cannot imagine losing my spouse, losing my husband, and being lost and broken in that manner. And that's what made me cry, was because I was like, she is literally shattered. She is broken to pieces, and she's trying to collect herself, and she's doing the best that she can, right? And Nasir's father, he has put himself together in a way that made him good enough for his kids and good enough to build a life that he could be proud of. But his heart was never really mended, right? I don't want to, because there's no way to replace someone who you love so much, but he still showed that, like, all choices that he made them for his children. And so in this, he was trying to do something that was okay for him, finally. So the romantic elements of this story, they were very beautiful. The word exquisite keeps coming to mind, but I like the way it was written. I like the way it was put together. I like the intensity in the sexuality of the relationship. I like the descriptions. I like the usage of food. I felt like the beauty and the things that were done were very appropriate in their spaces. But overall, there were things that I, of course, did not exactly. I wouldn't just tell somebody to go do that, right? But it doesn't mean I didn't like the book. I felt really bad again for Nasir. I felt like, dang, his heart was just broken. And I didn't like how it ended. I can say that I didn't like how it ended. I expected more or something. I don't know. But, hey, it was the end. She had to stop it somehow. I also loved how Faye was able to connect with other people who had loss. They had experienced loss. And I think it's so important in life to be able to experience what you're going through with people around you who understand. And so, like, that art piece that she made for the woman with her daughter's piece of clothing in it was so valuable. This book made me want to become an art collector. My son is in art, and his art is amazing. I have it on my walls, and I hope to see it in gaming and, movies and stuff like that. But I told him, I said, like, I want to collect your art and I want to collect others' art, because as I thought about what goes into this experience of creating that, the original piece, the original work, I just felt like was so powerful, and I want to support it. So again, I don't even know if they had to leave because it was a spoiler. I think the spoiler is really just that, they get together. That's not a question. They get together. Nasir loses his mind. Faye seems to be, a little bit conflicted but put together, and that she is at least experiencing some sort of joy. I was going to say happiness, but I say joy because she found someone who could deeply understand her, who she did not have to hide from. And I think that's good. I think that's healthy. So, those were some of the things that I liked about the book, about the fact that there was this personal development that took place. Things that I didn't like I didn't initially like the characters. I didn't initially like the story or what was happening in the story, but I still felt like I had to read it. I had to know what was going on. I wanted to really finish knowing what had happened. So, those are my thoughts on You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. If you agree or don't agree with me, please share your comments down below and leave me a thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, make sure that you go ahead and you subscribe. You can find me over at TikTok, where I connect almost every single day. If I'm not posting, then I'm at least commenting and, going back and forth in a discussion with people. Also, visit my blog. My link will be down in my description below. And I just want to thank you guys so much for joining me. Until next time.